Okay, so today we're going to talk about nightmare questions, questions that are super important in our sales process. Essentially, it triggers the prospect to think of a painful future. What happens if they don't make a change, the consequences of inaction, and the ramifications of them essentially not investing in themselves so they can make a change, solve their challenges, and move forward with your solution to fix their problems. Now, we're going to talk about 4 new questions that I haven't talked before, I haven't seen taught before, because the reality is a lot of times we will find resistance where we try to put the prospect in a situation where they don't want to be in. Let's be real. Most people, they're not comfortable wrestling with their failure. So when we ask a question, for example, what happens if you don't make a change and you keep having that problem? A lot of people we will find that it's like talking to a wall. They won't cooperate with us. So we're going to talk exactly how we're able to get past that resistance and actually seed doubt in their mind to get them to buy now, prevent think about it objections, and to prevent objections overall. To do that, we have to discuss a little bit more about the nightmare stage to begin with. So when we're talking about the nightmare stage is putting the prospect in a state where they're considering the future without them making a change. They have a problem today, and they stay on living with that problem without investing in a solution. So this allows the prospect to calculate in their mind the cost of inaction, what we call COI, cost of inaction, what they're missing out right now, and what they're missing out, and what they're going to miss out in the future in terms of money, in terms of time, in terms of wasted effort, in terms of energy. So why is this important? The reality is people change much more easily and they will change much faster to avoid pain than the promise of pleasure. And I want you to remember, we are change creators. How we build leverage in a sales process is the ethical use of pain they already have. Our goal isn't to inflict pain on people when we're having a conversation, is to get them to think about the problems that they have today and help them find new problems. Because if we allow them not to go into that place where they start troubleshooting and they're thinking about their problems, they won't make a change, they won't commit to making a change, and they won't invest in our solutions, right? So, what's exactly a nightmare question? A nightmare question is when we ask them, so Mr. Prospect, what happens if you don't make a change and you stay exactly where you are today? The problem stays exactly the same. You keep having, for example, if you're selling coaching, what happens if you don't make a change and you keep having you don't get coaching and you keep doing it on your own? You keep having these challenges for the next 2, 4, even 6 months. Or I can ask them, what are the ramifications of you not making a change though? Another question I can ask them is, what are you going to miss out though if you stay in the exact same position as you are today? So what the prospect typically says and how they answer is, well, I'm going to keep missing out on sales because I'm not going to know how to handle objections, or I'm not going to be able to generate my own leads, etc., etc. It heavily depends on what we're selling. Now, these are the nightmare questions, but what happens now? This is a nightmare question of our own. What happens if the prospect, if we receive pushback, if they don't answer that question? Or how do we handle a situation where a prospect isn't sure what's going to happen if they still have that problem? How can we handle it in a way where we help them starting to brainstorm the problems that are going to happen without triggering sales resistance, without being pushy? What most people do, the big mistake, is, well, if you don't buy now, this will happen. And the other thing will happen, and this thing will happen. And what do people do in these scenarios? They shut down and they want to exit the conversation, or they start to not care. They start to not pay attention to what you're saying. So this is where we have nightmare stage 2.0 and how we get the prospects to buy now. So as we've discussed, nightmare questions are a great tool to drum up urgency, but there's opportunity to go deeper. As trusted advisors, we have to be able to see doubt in their mind. So as we find additional nightmares that they have or consequences, we're able to gain their trust and position ourselves as experts. And the reality is, the more you sell of a specific thing, or the more you are in an industry, regardless if you're selling for someone else or you're selling your own offers, the longer you sell, you're going to realize and you're going to see patterns. Like a lot of people are going to have this problem that's getting voiced, and problem number 2, and problem number 3. So when you're able to tactfully remind those prospects of these problems, you're going to position yourself as a trusted advisor, because essentially you're predicting their future in a way if they don't make a change. But we have to make it tactful. So this works particularly well when people are unaware of all the consequences. And it also works when we're talking to someone who is an A-type personality, people who are very, let's say A-type personality, so they're more on the aggressive side, they're high achievers, they're not really willing to accept that failure is an option, and they're going to start pushing back when we ask a nightmare question. So what do we ask in these scenarios? Here's an example. I'm going to ask them, are you concerned that as a result of this problem, it might affect your ability to, and I'm going to talk about another problem. Let me give you an example. Are you concerned that as a result of your inability to handle sales objections, it might affect your calendar because you're going to have to book follow-ups, and this will prevent new prospects from booking on your calendar? So what essentially am I telling them? If you don't know how to handle objections, you're going to have to keep following up with people. And all that time that you're wasting on follow-up, you could be having new conversations with people. So essentially, what am I telling them? Dude, you don't know how to handle objections. So your sales cycle is going to keep getting longer and longer. And all of that time you can spend talking to new people. So essentially, I'm telling them you're losing out on money. But I'm doing it in a way where I'm not slapping them in their face, but I'm reminding them by asking the question, are you concerned that as a result of you consistently getting objections, it might affect your ability to book new calls with prospects because you're going to have to follow up with the old ones? This is another question. Let's move into question number 2. Have you considered that because of you having this problem, it might affect your ability to do the other thing? For example, have you considered that because you're spending so much time following up with people, it might cause you to miss out on sales going forward because you're not going to take new calls? Let's look at question number 3. Are you aware that if this problem continues to happen, you could experience consequence 1, consequence 2, or consequence number 3? Essentially, I'm seeding those consequences in their mind. So in a scenario where I ask them, well, what happens if you don't know how to handle objections? You keep getting the same sales objections and you don't know how to handle them. Have you considered the ramifications of that continuing to happen in the next 2, 4, even 6 months? And people, let's say, well, I don't know. I don't want to think about it. What I can say is, well, are you aware that if you don't know how to handle objections and your closing rate is still low, you're going to keep missing out on 20% of your sales because the industry average in terms of closing rate is at least 30%. And right now you're closing at 10%. So are you comfortable with you losing at least 20% on your closing rate moving forward? And are you okay with that happening if you could change it? So here I'm essentially drilling, but I'm doing it from a concerned point of view. So again, I don't want to slap them around to create change. I'm asking them questions to get them to think about change and what they're missing out. Let's look at question number 4. And this is where I can start with a suggestion and I'm going to put the ball on their court. So I'm going to say, well, what typically happens when problems are left untreated is this consequence. May I ask, how do you plan on fixing that if that happens? So what am I doing there? I'm highlighting the fact that when that consequence shows up, they don't have a plan for it. I'm not saying it, I'm asking them to validate they don't have a plan for it. Or the other thing you could say, which is my favorite one, is going to the negative. So I'm going to assume that they have a plan and I want them to reject that, which essentially tells themselves, they're going to tell themselves that they don't have a plan. So this is how it would look like. So, Chris, what typically happens when the problem gets left untreated is this consequence. Now, I'm guessing you have a plan when that shows up though, right? They're going to say no. Oh, you don't. So how do you think you can resolve that where you can have a plan so that consequence doesn't happen? What are they going to do now? They're going to start selling themselves on buying your plan, on investing on your solution. And that's where I can actually hit them with a nightmare question because I'm leaving them open. And I can ask them, well, what happens if you don't have the right plan in place and you keep having these problems and those consequences show up? That's how I'm able to go so much deeper with them, have them actually explore that failure, and allowing them with me as a trusted advisor to consider that failure, and we're collaborating around that. And now it's going to be very, very hard for them to be combative because I'm just showing them that there is no plan in place, but also I'm educating them around the consequences, around the nightmares that can happen if the problems are left untreated. So just to wrap it up, the typical questions that the typical nightmare questions or consequence questions or even implication questions, people call them sometimes, are what happens if you don't make a change and you stay with exactly where you are? Have you considered the ramifications of you not making a change? Or what are you going to miss out on if you stay exactly where you are today? A big note here and something to take away is the more you customize the question and the more specific you make it according to the conversation that you had with the prospect, the more it will hit, the better it will land, the deeper it will cut, for lack of a better term. That's where nightmare questions 2.0 come in, when they start rejecting exploring that failure, or they're unaware of the exact consequences. Like if they give me a consequence that's not serious enough and I clearly see that question didn't land properly, I'm going to go to my nightmare questions 2.0 and I'm going to ask something like, well, I can understand that in your mind, consequence number 1 might happen, but are you aware that if you stay exactly where you are with the exact same problem, you could experience consequence number 1, 2, and 3 as well? Okay, well, are you okay with that's happening if you could change it. That's how I can get them to brainstorm and make them aware around those consequences, about those consequences. And the last part, again, I want to reiterate it because it's important, is how I'm able to seed that is I'm informing them. I'm not telling them what is going to happen. I'm talking from experience based on other clients or other prospects that I've talked to. So what I'm telling them is, well, what typically happens in other cases that we've seen, if the problem is left untreated, is this consequence. Now, I'm guessing you have a plan when that shows up, or you must have a plan when that shows up, right? No, I don't. Oh, that could be trouble. So what happens if you don't have a plan? You stay exactly where you are, and that consequence comes to life. Let's open the floor up for questions and doubtful points to make sure that you're properly equipped to use the nightmare questions. And if everything is clear, of course, feel free to ask me questions about your sales process. I'm here to support you. Just raise your hand and ask. Panayoti.
First of all, hey Chris, hey guys, good afternoon. My question would be how could you implement nightmare questions? Because even before seeing them as a technique from you, I've tried to implement them into my sales process, especially for loans. I remember the last loan I was in negotiations for. Uh, the client was like, is the money gonna be in my account when I ask you for? Because I have to pay salaries, so I cannot be left without any credit.
Yep.
Um, it was fine because to him we were a pretty foreign, let's say unknown bank, so it wasn't a systemic one. And in order to get him out of this, let's say, how to say it, uncertainty, I was like to him, well, Mr. X, we're signing a contract, aren't we? Like a loan disbursement contract, which makes us responsible to do the things that are required, that are written inside the contract. So if worst thing happen, hence the nightmare stage, you can go to court with us to sue us, etc., etc. So I try
That's
to.
not nightmare stage, just so I'm clear.
Okay.
This is not nightmare stage. This is him having an objection around
Mm-hmm.
what you're selling,
Mm-hmm.
right? Nightmare questions and nightmare stage, what that means is I want to get them to think what happens if they don't make a change. So in that case, it would be me asking them, well, what happens if you don't make a change and you don't get a loan or the right loan, and
Mm-hmm.
your employees come to you and you don't have the money to pay them in the next 2, 4, 6 months? Now, what would
Yeah.
happen then?
Yeah, I
That
see. But
would be a nightmare question because I would get him to reply, well, I can't allow that to happen because I'm going to go bankrupt or they're going to complain or etc., etc. That's a nightmare question. What you're talking about is them having an objection around how do I know if you guys are legit? That's the question. That's
yeah,
the right. How
yeah.
you handle that? Tell me how you handled it.
So essentially, I told him that since we are signing a contract, both of us, the bank and you, we are obliged to serve the requirements of the contract. So if we fail to do so, because it also in the contract is also written the disbursement date.
Yeah.
So if we fail to do so, you can go to court with us, etc., etc. And then I see him getting anxious and being like, "No, we didn't say to go to court, and we are supposed to start a healthy partnership, so we don't have to talk about court, etc., etc.
Yep.
So I made him a little anxious, but I saw it working because we continued the process. So I actually managed
Yep.
to close the deal and disperse it.
Yep. Yeah. And you answer his objection by taking it into extreme by
Exactly. Yeah. So do you think this is correct, or it was
yeah,
more like,
yeah, it's not bad. Essentially, you're telling him, hey, well, the worst thing in the worst case scenario, like we're going to court and let the court handle it. It's not bad. The only problem with it is you're treating it with logic, and decisions are not made with logic. They're are getting resolved with emotion,
yeah,
right? So you didn't
right.
necessarily answer his objection. It's just because he had, from his background, negative experience with courts and stuff, or he hadn't gone to court before with someone. Fear was created internally for him.
Yeah, exactly.
But that it doesn't mean that it will be the case with every prospect going forward. So it was a little bit risky, is essentially what
Yeah.
I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, keep in mind that we were already deep into negotiations and conversations for like the past 2 months. So he was not a fresh prospect. Like the deal was already, for example, he had already paid for a loan application fee, and it was like the process was close to getting closed, getting done.
Understood. That's fine. I'm just saying I would be careful with it regardless, because
Okay.
again, the longer a deal drags on, also the
Hmm.
higher the probability of you losing it. Not you, everyone. That's
Well,
just
unfortunately, that's not in my hand because I work for an organization, so there are internal processes that need to take place, and I'm just the, let's say, mediator that tries.
I'm not saying you're
Yeah,
not. I'm not saying you are or you aren't. As sales professionals overall,
I agree with you.
if I can close a deal in 30 days by the book
Hmm.
and it closes in 35, it's just the longer I allow the process to drag on, even if it's, you know, 2 days, 5 days, the higher the probability of me losing it. This is studies. It's not, I'm not just pulling it off my behind. Cool, awesome. Well, I'm glad you closed the deal, and yeah, onwards and upwards. What other
Thank you.
questions do we have? It can be about nightmare questions or any other challenges. Ali, did you have something for me? I saw you turn on your camera. Ali's probably busy. Anything else?
Uh, well, if no one else wants to ask something, I'd also like to ask how could you implement such questions in to the sales process? And I'm trying to tie that with also your heaven and hell technique, which is actually nice. I've been trying to practice it in the past few calls, and also with the spin technique, if you are aware of it, if
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
familiar.
Yeah, I mean, Spain isn't bad. It's just very consultative. So it's a system. It's not just a technique. It consists of multiple techniques. The only challenge that I have with the spin system is it's very consultative and it stays very logical. So it stays very surface level when it comes to the
Mm,
conversations. And the challenge with that is, again, you're not going deep enough to create an emotional reaction and to trigger an emotional decision. Like with spin, you wouldn't ask a nightmare question because it's not part of the spin process. The
yeah,
spin is current situation, future situation, and what are the obstacles. And there are some implication questions, but they don't
yeah,
go deep enough to calculate the cost of inaction, essentially. It's just like a spin question, an implication question would be, what do you feel you've missed out on so far? Like that would be the
yeah.
length it takes. We are taking it to the next level. So how do you implement it into a process is once you identify a problem and you know that it's a clear pain point for them and they express it. So you didn't just, jolt it out of them, but they express it. They like, for
Yeah, but
example, Mhm.
I'm sorry, but in which stage of the conversation would it be appropriate for you to implement it? Because you understand it's nightmare questions are a little bit uncomfortable, for example. Like, and especially one of my, let's say, um, things that I'm worried about is that this kind of selling and this kind of conversations are not really that usual in the Greek market, as in comparison with the American one, right? Or I'm wrong? What?
I don't know, you tell me, do Greeks come from another planet?
No, but I mean compared to the US, for example, where the American people and also the market is trained to like have conversation like this, and it's
I would
uh,
argue, I would argue that Greeks are
mhm.
more drama queens than US people.
Okay, maybe. It's just that
You tell me, like, am I wrong in that?
not really sure because so far, I mean, I only have 1 year of exposure, let's say, in the sales game. I mean, a real market. So, so far, I've just tried to follow the policy of the bank that I work for, and they are also even more, let's say, typical and conservative when it comes to approach. They're like, you ask specific questions, you have a specific script, but I see it not really working for me, and I feel like I'm losing prospects for that. So this is the reason I'm trying.
I can for sure tell you, I'm not being cocky. I can for sure tell you,
Mhm.
that you're losing prospects
Yeah, I
because
mean, I can also feel it because if I'm in the, let's say, the team can technique that we say in sales, saying the same thing again and again doesn't work after a while. So it's good when you're a beginner in order for you to feel more comfortable, but then as you progress, it doesn't work anymore. So
look, here's the
I'm
thing.
trying.
Here's how you implement nightmare questions to make it easy for you. So you're having a conversation with someone, and if you're looking at the stages that I've mapped out, it's during the health discovery. So
Hmm,
once you ask them and you start having a conversation with them, when they voice a problem, for example, like give me a typical problem in a few words, a typical problem that you receive in your sales conversations.
okay, cool. Thanks.
No,
By the way,
yeah, yeah,
sorry, did you ask me something? Maybe I missed.
yeah. Give me a problem
Yeah.
here in your sales conversations
A problem in my sales conversation.
that they tell you. Like,
Like an
hey,
objection or something.
Panagiotis, we're really struggling with this. What's
Uh-huh.
this?
Well, this is the issue. My phone calls are not really sales like. They're more like trying to catch to book an appointment and
I
in order
understand.
to discuss.
I'm getting you. I'm getting you. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that their life is going to be in danger, right? But
Mhm.
what's a tiny problem that's going to get voiced? Why would they book a call to talk to you?
Okay, to discuss potential ways that they could benefit from a partnership with our bank in comparison to the systemic ones, because
Perfect. Pause. Why would they partner with you versus a systemic bank?
I am mainly sticking to the interpersonal communication part, the tailor-made services, and the lower rate when it comes to transactions and loans.
Perfect. Okay. So lower rates.
Mhm.
So when you're offering a lower rate, what problem are you solving?
Uh, like increased unnecessary banking services costs from
So you're saving them money.
yeah.
That's the thinking that I want you to go through, though. When I ask you what problem are you solving for them, the first thing that you have to tell me is I'm saving them money
Mhm.
because they pay less fees. I'm saving them time because we have better communication.
Mhm.
And the third thing, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because this is important though, because when they ask you, Panayoti, you called me, tell me how the hell you're gonna help me. You shouldn't tell me, hey, we have a good interpersonal connections, we have lower rates. I'm gonna save you money. How I do it is this. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So essentially, you get straight ahead to the solution to their problem.
It's the benefits. It's the
Yeah,
benefit.
the
Start
benefit,
with the
exactly.
benefit.
That's the
Then
word.
I'm telling them how. That's the future.
Yeah.
And then details about the future, the
Mhm.
exact future. The mistake a lot of sales professionals make is that's where we say we're staying surface level. We're talking about the future. I couldn't care less about the future, right?
Yeah.
I'm taking 10 seconds of my time, 1 minute, 5 minutes to talk to you. I don't care about what you have. What are you going to do for me? I'm gonna save you money. Okay, you bought yourself another 20 seconds. Tell me how. Well, we have lower rates. Tell me more. I'm keeping it very simple, but do you see where I'm going? This is the
Yeah.
foundation.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So you need the, let's say, you need a catch point in order to drag their attention.
That's the hook. Because if I'm
The
leading,
hook.
hey, we have great communication with our clients, I don't care. Bye.
Yeah.
Um, and the biggest factor in the nightmare questions, to circle back, is once I start talking about that pain point, that the lower rates, I will use that. Well, what happens if you don't make a change and you keep paying those high rates for the next 2, 5, 12 months?
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, I'm gonna pay, and you help them calculate it. So you're
Mm.
telling me you're gonna pay an extra 2,000 euros because of the higher rate. Are you okay with you paying 24,000 a year when you can save that money so you can invest it in other areas of the company?
Yeah.
Can you see yourself doing that? Is there?
Well, sir, I'm currently in a situation where I'm trying and experimenting with techniques. So yeah,
I'm
why not?
with you, but is anything that I'm telling you insane and wouldn't
No,
work, Chris?
actually, actually your technique and your style is, I think, one of the most efficient ones I've seen so far. So that's why I'm trying to practice it. And
Yeah, I'm just saying the point I'm trying to make is like it works. It doesn't matter if I'm
yeah,
selling to a Greek, to a Chinese, to like this is human psychology. Human
mm,
psychology doesn't change between civilizations. We all have our biases and our different beliefs, but in the basis of the basic currencies of humans, that's what we play with. It's money, it's time, it's energy, it's reputation, it's our identity. These are the five. That's the cards that I'm dealt with as a human being.
yeah, sure. Okay, thank you.
Cool. Ali,
Hello, Chris.
what's up?
Yeah, so I have some questions. So I'm calling outbound leads, and just, having conversation and book them in. Some of them I book them in, but some of them they are just curious, and for me, I'm not accepting that they say I'm just curious.
Yeah.
It's something behind they registered for the masterclass. So my question is, how can I, so when they say I'm just curious, okay, so besides the curiosity, what was it you are, hoping to get out of the masterclass? And I said, no, I just wanted to see what it was. Okay,
Yeah.
what were you hoping to, was it something you hoping to learn from the masterclass?
Here's the thing. I don't want to cut you off, but it's important.
Yeah,
They're giving you, hey, I'm curious.
yeah,
They're putting a thing in front of you. I'm curious. right? What you're doing is, okay, dude, but besides that, what are you here for? Instead, what I want, and there's a resistance because they're giving you the exact same thing. Well, I want to see what it is,
Yeah.
right? Instead, they're giving you something important. Curiosity. What is curiosity triggered from? Like, what are they curious about? How is curiosity created? It comes from internally, right?
Mm.
They got triggered. Curiosity, it gets, they see a trigger and they're curious about that trigger. Curiosity stems from, what does it stem out of? It stems either from a pain or a big benefit that they get, a pain or a big promise, right? That's it. So what I want to do is, instead of trying to push their curiosity to the side, is I want to go in. So let's role play it out. Just give me exactly what they give you.
Yeah.
Hey, is this Chris?
Yeah, this is Chris.
Hey, Chris. I saw that you registered for our masterclass X and Y and Z. Did you end up going through it? I didn't see you there. I'm not sure.
No, unfortunately, I had a lot of things to do.
That's not don't worry about it. I can send you a recording. May I ask, what was it that attracted your attention when it comes to the masterclass in the first place?
Yeah, just I was just curious about what you're
Curious about?
Yeah, just curious.
To do what exactly?
Yeah, I saw an ad and
Yeah.
I liked it, so why not?
What did you like about it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what it was, but yeah, like I said, I was just curious, you know.
Oh yeah. And I'm not saying yet that you aren't. It's just, what were you hoping to get out of possibly implementing some mindset training? Like, what got you curious into it?
I don't know. I mean, I'm just looking around and see what I can, you know, what I can get because it's free, so why
Yeah.
not?
Yeah, it is free, but what was the end goal that you were hoping to achieve out of implementing mindset training? Like, what were you looking around for?
Yeah, so on the ad they told something about, you know, how to get a better life and,
Okay.
you know, change mindset and so on. So I just got curious around that and
Okay. What had you looking to change your mindset though? Like, what has you feeling that way?
um yeah, I mean, I'm not liking the results I'm getting right now.
Results around?
Yeah, around my life right now.
What are you currently doing to get better results?
Nothing.
I didn't ask you, like, what do you do for a living, by the way?
Yeah, I'm teacher. I'm a teacher.
Okay, so is it more around your specific like occupation, like you being a teacher, or your personal life, if I may ask?
It's both. It's personal and it's
Unpack it for me. Can you give me an example?
yeah. For example, I'm struggling with um to find a partner and
Pause. Did I get what I wanted?
yeah. I feel like what do you think, Chris? If I dig deeper what I'm doing, because when I'm asking, I feel like resistance is going up much higher and higher when I'm asking, like, okay, so
Did you feel triggered when I asked you?
not triggered, but I feel you dig deeper and deeper, right? So what I'm having conversation with prospects, some of them open up, but some of them is like, I'm just curious. And okay, so besides the curiosity, is it in terms of
Not
your mind?
besides, though. I didn't ask besides.
Okay.
Did I ask besides? Did I use that word besides?
Not besides, but you had another word.
It's big because besides is I'm ignoring you. I'm ignoring what you said.
Yeah.
Besides you being curious is one thing. what got you curious about X is a different thing. Because one is using your language, the other is combating your language. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Okay, so
and even the simplest thing, which another option, what you could do is, yeah, I got curious about X and Y and Z. Curious about X, Y, and Z. Like you can do that as well. You can just mirror them.
yeah, probe, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just mirror probe.
Okay, so you mean now that I should, when they say curiosity, I should go into the curiosity
I'm
and
not gonna
rather
push
than,
the weight
yeah,
in
rather than
there.
push them. Yeah.
I'm
Okay.
gonna dive into that person. Like I'm gonna like the biggest thing when I'm talking to someone is overt outcome.
Yeah.
What's the overt outcome?
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and I have another question. So on the, if I can ask one more question.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So the other question is, so it- on the final stage when we say, yeah, okay, so how long have you been, on the consequence, we have the nightmare question, and after the nightmare question, we ask like, how long do you want to, don't make the change about the, for example, procrastination. I don't feel I get that right. So how can I say that in a better way when I do after the nightmare question?
So repeat the question that you're asking exactly.
So I don't know how to say it in English, but it's like how long do you want to push that off and not make the change so you can get the outcome? You understand what I mean?
Yeah, you don't want to ask that though.
Okay.
You don't want to ask that. Is that objection handling or is that in your consequence, in your nightmare stage?
That's on the objection handling.
Okay, so that's different. So
Yeah.
when you're asking that, you feel that it does not hit.
It doesn't hit, no, it doesn't hit that hard.
Okay, so when you use that, you have to build up to it, right? So you can't just, if they tell you, oh, I want to think about it, right? You can't just come up and ask, oh, how long do you want to think about it, where you can make a change so you can get to the outcome. It's not when I will use it. It's not the right time to use it. Like I'm gonna need some more context to see like exactly how, and because that's more of a transition phrase. It's not necessarily, the line that you will say and it will 100% land. It's how you set it up. So in what objection do you actually use that?
So so after when I say like, okay, so we calculate how much, how much they lose in terms of revenue, for example, on the company. So how much how much expensive is it? Is it more expensive to keep losing, for example, 10,000 every month, or is it more expensive to invest 12,000 on a program that's, change X, Y, and Z so you can get X, Y, and Z? And they say, yeah, I had one. He said, yeah, it's much more risky to not do anything about it. And I said, yeah, okay, what happens if you don't change your procrastinations?
You don't have to go there necessarily. You can, if they accepted it,
yeah,
you can say, okay, so what's the best next step for us then?
Okay. So I'm too much on the script.
Yeah.
So you mean, okay, so you mean now if I get the answer what I needed, I can just close them, right?
Yeah, dude, like if you do what's more expensive here? Is it more expensive for you? And I have to be specific. Is it
Yeah.
more expensive for you to keep missing out on
Yeah.
10,000 like every single month for the next 3, 6, 9 months? That's gonna
Yeah.
cost you probably 90,000. Or is it more expensive to come up with 12,000? Can make the tweaks so you can start capturing 10,000 every single month, which is more expensive. Or
Yeah.
it's more expensive to
Not
do.
do anything. Yeah.
Okay, well, so does it make sense for us to start working together so we can get to work growing?
Yeah.
Or then if you feel that way, like what's the best next step for us?
Mm. Yeah.
You can close it then and there. You don't need to, if they're not sure, if they're like still, on the verge, yeah, you're right. Then I'm gonna say, well, because what happens if you don't make a change and you keep missing out on 10,000 every single month? Are you okay with that scenario playing out if you didn't have to? No, I'm not. Okay, then what's the best way for us to proceed?
That makes sense. Okay, that make a lot of sense now because I feel like I had two prospects I talked with, great conversations, went through the process, and they were like, okay, we do it, okay? And the thing is that the one of them was like, okay, I have to sell my boat to get the funds in and so on and so on. So my question is, how can I keep him because selling a boat, it takes time to get the funds and so on. It maybe takes 1 week or 2 or 3 weeks, I don't know. But how can I make him, stay on the yes path and continue to, okay, I'm gonna invest this.
Yeah. I mean, the easiest thing for you is to get the deposit.
Okay. In terms of deposit, how much do you think I should take?
However much they have.
Okay.
So, okay, but besides you selling the boat, would you move forward so you can make the changes?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, why though? Because of this. Okay, well, may I make a suggestion? Sure. When it comes to people that it's just the logistics and figuring out, we're just waiting for the money to come in. What we typically do is we take a deposit. This is more for them to show commitment that this is the path that they want to take. They want to improve their lives and they commit to the path. And then once the full amount comes in, we can kick off the onboarding process. But what that deposit allows us to do is to start onboarding you, get the details in. So once you're ready, we hit the ground running. Would that help you if we took a deposit? I mean, yeah, how much the deposit would be? I mean, you tell me, what do you feel comfortable with putting down to lock in your spot, make sure that we're on the right track here?
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Because I had two people that, they have to, transition.
Double check that it's an actual
Yeah.
logistical objection and it's not a fair objection.
Yeah.
And then ideally, what I like to do is have mapped out other options like, is there a payment plan? Can I do a split pay?
Yeah.
And the last commitment is a deposit, and the final commitment is rebooking a call. Like ideally, what I want to do is see if I can do a split pay,
Yeah.
or 3 pay or 4 pay, depending on the payment plan. And if they want to get started later, you just get the first payment and you give them some early access, but they don't get access to the coaching calls, and then full access when they pay.
Yeah.
And later on, so you want the higher the commitment, the better it is for you, because at least you get to collect half up front or a third.
Yeah. Okay, so that makes sense. So I have to, first pay in full and split, and then payment plan and then deposit.
Yeah. 2 pay, 3 pay,
Yeah.
maybe 4 pay, depending on the amount. And then you can do a $500 deposit.
Yeah.
But But yeah, if they don't want to put like, and they're resistant to even a 250 deposit, like it's a fair objection and they're just brushing you off.
Okay, it makes sense. And I have the last question now. So I have a prospect. He had the money, okay? He really wanted to do it, but he gave me an objection like um he gave me like so he's a car salesman, so he has struggling with, starting the business and so on and so on. So he wants to change his mindset. So he said, I'm right now on the middle of like, quitting my job and start the business and so on. So I have to sell some cars before I can come back and, make the investment. But I feel like it was a fair objection
Mhm.
when I said that. So how can I, overcome that in a good way? Is it like a
Yeah, yeah.
reframe then, or?
Yeah, well, Chris, may I make a suggestion? Sure. Not having the money
Yeah.
isn't actually the problem. It's the symptom of a problem. Wouldn't you say? What do you mean? Well, not having the money to do this is because, if you allow me, you don't have the right mindset to produce that kind of money. So it makes sense. You're not born with that kind of mindset, but that's why people commit the program before they get sales, right? Do you learn how to swim before you dive into the ocean, or do you dive into the ocean with the sharks and then learn how to swim? Typically, you take swimming lessons before you dive into the ocean, right? So would it make sense for us to get you trained up so when you start selling and starting tomorrow, you have the right mindset to go right in and really crush it with your sales? Like, what would make more sense for you?
Mm. Yeah, okay. So that's a reframe, right? So
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Yeah, that will be okay, that makes sense. Okay, so yeah, okay. Because I feel like when they say something like that, that's a fear. Because they
Yeah,
have fear.
yeah.
They have to do, yeah. Okay. Okay. Makes sense.
Cool. Are we good?
Yeah, we're good. Thank you so much.
Great. Awesome. Let's keep at it, and yeah, keep me updated. Of course, if you have questions, like you have me on Slack, ping me.
Sure.
We can unpack there too. Awesome. Joe, good to see you as well. And yeah, every Sunday, hop on board. We're gonna unpack everything. All right. See you guys around.